Just a quick word of introduction from me as well before I hand over to Charlotte. Charlotte, a partner at Winkworth Sherwood. We're really pleased to host this afternoon's happy hour. We have a long history of looking at a broad range of issues in relation to diversity. It really matters to the Housing LIN, and what a better way to kick off Pride Month with this particular session. Can I thank Charlotte and her team for their continued support of the Housing LIN. We run 2 happy hours a year with them. And if you haven't seen previous ones, I think we've done ones on almshouses, on planning, a whole variety of different issues, and they're really well received. But as I say, I'm handing over to Charlotte, who's co-chairing this afternoon's session. So Charlotte, over to you.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. Thank you for having us. Welcome to everybody to what I hope will be a super session. We're Winkworth Sherwood. We have been long-term supporters of the Housing LIN. We've been working with the LIN, I think, pretty much since its inception. As Jeremy said, we love taking part in happy hours. That they're absolutely brilliant. If I can just do a little bit of a plug, this is not about us, but taking the opportunity. We have recently published a summary of guidance of the Affordable Homes Programme with the Housing LIN. So do please take a look at that. I think that's really useful actually, because that talks to the latest grant giving programme for the period 2026 to 2036, and there's an awful lot of emphasis within that to supported housing, specialist types of housing, and hopefully something that some of our speakers here can talk to as well. We're all very much aware of the importance of housing. Maslow's hierarchy of needs obviously places this pretty near the top. It's a fundamental human necessity, and it directly impacts the physical and mental health of those who live in and near all types of housing, a driver for all types of communities there. I hope that most people on the call here would be very aware of the need for stable and affordable housing for all. And this being Pride Month, we're turning and looking at how that type of safe and affirming housing and what that means for the LGBTQ plus communities today. So without further ado, I said it's not about me, it's about our speakers here today. I've got 3 illustrious speakers. The first, Professor Andrew King, who is the co-director of the Centre of Excellence on Ageing at the University of Surrey, amongst many other things. I've Googled him. There are pages of information there. And he's going to talk to the academic side of the topic here, leading then to Dr. Georgia Bowers, who is a lecturer and course leader for the Applied and Contemporary Theatre at the University of Surrey. Georgia is going to be looking at one way of engaging with LGBTQ people and individuals, and talking through her practice of applied theatre, a theatre maker, a producer and an educator. Finally, Jude Leighton will be speaking with us. Jude's from United St Saviour's. Her colleague Alessandra Scianchi, hope I pronounced that correctly, has been fabulously informative in helping Jude's presentation. He he's not here with us to speak with you, but I believe he is lurking in the wings somewhere. So thank you, Alessandro, for that. Jude's head of housing at United St Saviour's. I'm sure we've all heard many things about them. We're not talking about any more architectural prizes. You've had your lot. Right, so without any more ado, if I could invite Andy to kick us off, please, here. As Sally said, if those in the audience would like to do so, please do put questions into the Q&A box. We'll pick those up at the end of the session, and Sally is usually putting in some information in the chat, so if there's anything that we refer to in any of the conversations here, you can find that information available there. So, Andy, over to you.
Thanks very much, Charlotte. Hopefully you can see my slides. I'll just put them on slideshow. And yep, hope you can see those okay. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank Housing LIN for the invitation, and I very much hope that what I'm going to speak about will be interesting and useful for people today. It is Pride Month, and I think it's really important that we celebrate all sorts of things during Pride Month, but particularly celebrate things around housing. But without being pessimistic, I think we also need to focus on some of the challenging issues that exist and think about initiatives that could be undertaken to address those as well. And that's kind of what I'm going to concentrate on. So I'm going to talk very briefly, I promise you, about research and impact projects that cover about 10 years that I've been involved with here at the University of Surrey. And they all stem from a seminar series I co-organised with Catherine Almack, Tung Suan and Sue Westwood between 2013 and 2015, which was looking at knowledge gaps related to older LGBT people. And one of those knowledge gaps was housing. And to our surprise, we found that there wasn't really very much research about housing and older LGBTQ plus people. And so one of the things that I subsequently set out to do was to actually do some research, but that led on to projects that really sort of aimed at making an impact on policy and practice. And that sort of colourful array of reports and various other things there that you can see, which you can link to on my website. I'll put up the link at the end if you'd like to read in more depth. All came from there. I think one thing I'd really like to emphasise is that all of these projects have very much been using mixed methods, so surveys, interviews, focus groups, but all these co-designed with LGBTQ people, with housing professionals, and with LGBTQ support organisations as well. So it's very much collaborative effort, both for the research and for the impact as well. It's really difficult to try to just give a really brief summary of some of the key issues around housing and the experience of older LGBTQ people and housing. But I think to sort of summarize it, it is that feeling safe and being able to be your authentic LGBTQ plus self at home is highly dependent on a range of factors beyond bricks and mortar and other things related to housing like that. So I just wanted to highlight just a few of those things that came out of our research. First of all was people's perceptions and experiences with neighbours and their neighbourhood. So in our studies, whilst most people felt they lived in generally safe neighbourhoods, a majority didn't feel that it was always safe being an LGBT person in their neighbourhood. And there were particular concerns around discrimination, harassment from neighbours, as well as hate crime. This was particularly the case for trans and non-binary participants in our studies who had much higher experiences of hate crime and other forms of microaggression. So I put some quotes in here. The top one that you can see is from a trans woman who says, "How do you deal with, the guy next door who won't even get in a lift with me?" We heard in our research about people modifying their home in some way to hide clues to their authentic LGBTQ selves. People were hyper vigilant around their home. 1 in 5 gay men spoke about removing pictures, like you can see in this quote here, when certain people were coming into their home because they were concerned about discrimination or harassment. We also had people telling us about becoming isolated, being isolated or becoming isolated or vulnerable, either because their LGBTQ social networks were disrupted in some way if they had to move, particularly if they had to move into a retirement community or a care home. Or that they would feel vulnerable and unable to address discrimination, as you can see from that bottom quote there from an older lesbian who said, I think it would worry me if I wasn't in a position to fight my corner. I wouldn't like that. If I was in an empowered state, yeah, you get on and try it. But if I wasn't well, I wouldn't want to think that homophobia might happen to me. So an added level of vulnerability for some LGBTQ older people. Concern about inclusive services, services for older people, but also other services that might be needed within the home environment as well, that they would experience discrimination, particularly from healthcare workers and domiciliary care workers, but also home repairs people as well. And then not having an adequate response from service providers if they experience discrimination, harassment, abuse, or hate crime. As one gay man said to us, they might write a letter, a very gentle letter. So there wasn't always a lot of trust in service providers. We also asked about housing needs, and what was clear from our studies was that people had concerns about their housing needs later in life, but they hadn't made any plans and they didn't know where they could find that information. There was a lot of concern about discrimination in mainstream housing for older people, and a lot of concern about particular types of older people's housing as well. When care was included, there were very, very significant concerns. And when we asked about care providers, the majority wanted LGBTQ specific care provision available to them. Because we were aware of certain accreditation schemes like the Pink Passkey in the Netherlands, which are LGBTQ plus inclusive housing and care schemes, we asked people if they would like to see that kind of a scheme in the UK. And around about a third of participants in our survey said that they would. But when we followed up in focus groups and interviews, people had concerns about how they would be accredited, would they be properly administered, and things like that. So I want to just briefly talk about two initiatives that followed from that research and that I've been involved in over the last 7 years or so. The first one, which some of you may have heard about, is the LGBTQ plus housing pledge. It was developed by us here at the University of Surrey with Houseproud, and it's now delivered by Stonewall Housing. And if you scan that QR code, you can get a link to the Stonewall Housing webpage for it. It's a free of charge scheme that all social housing providers can sign up to, and it asks them to demonstrate their commitment to LGBTQ plus resident equality and support. And they demonstrate that through increasing visibility that they are an LGBTQ plus inclusive organisation, through staff education, and also enabling LGBTQ plus residents to have an input at strategic level as well. 98 social housing providers of all sizes are now signed up to it in the UK. That's housing associations and local authorities. There's regular accreditation process. There's an advisory board, and there is a panel that sits and goes through lots of evidence that each provider who is participating in it submits. And those panels include LGBTQ plus residents. LGBTQ plus residents were involved in the design of the scheme, and they're involved in the running of the scheme as well. There's also a forum that's run by Stonewall Housing, which is a kind of community of practice and support for those signed up as well. The second initiative that I want to briefly mention is one that we're just about to launch, which we've been working on for about the last 10 months. And it was really to address gaps in knowledge about the needs of older LGBTQ plus people in relation to housing, and particularly to provide sources of support when people are thinking about that themselves, so community members thinking about that. So it's called Making Safe Housing Choices, and it's the Universities of Surrey and Hertfordshire, Stonewall Housing and Tonic Housing. And we've developed a guidebook for LGBTQ plus community members. We've developed that with LGBTQ plus community members that have been involved in the design of it and the information that's gone in it. And it covers a whole range of things that people need to think about when they're thinking about housing for themselves later in life. We've also developed an infographic for housing professionals. Again, that's been developed with the housing professionals and LGBTQ plus people as well. It's launching, of course, later this month in Pride Month. Yeah, please do watch out for lots of comms that will come out about those two new resources. Both of those projects have been funded by the Economic and Social Research Council, the Joseph Rowntree Trust, and a number of housing providers and the University of Surrey as well over the years. And just some reflections to finish off. I'd really emphasize the importance of collaborative working in this space. I think it is absolutely vital to the success of any of these initiatives if not only the research is collaborative, but also the knowledge exchange and the impact work is as well, with LGBTQ plus community members who are very much involved in active and engaged positions, and who represent the diversity of the LGBTQ plus community. I haven't really had a chance to talk about intersectionality, but that's very important too. So making sure you have a very wide range of community members involved in these processes. Collaboration with housing organisations has also been important, as well as local and central government. So we were lucky to have the Greater London Authority involved when we were developing the housing pledge scheme as well. So I think we should celebrate progress that has been made, especially during Pride months. But I do think that it's really important that we're mindful that there is still a huge amount to do, and that some sections of our community, some people are, in a very, very precarious position, especially at the moment with all sorts of political and other issues going on as well. And I'm thinking particularly of trans and non-binary older people. So I also think it's really important that we find creative ways to facilitate LGBTQ plus people to tell their stories and enable those stories to be heard, and to educate others is really important. And hopefully that leads into what George is going to talk about in a moment. If you'd like any of the reports or academic papers and things that I've published on this, please have a look at my website. Thank you very much, and I'm very happy to be contacted if anyone has any follow-ups or questions afterwards.
Lovely. Thank you very much indeed, Andy. That was really very, very interesting. And as you say, obviously there is still work to do and there remains work to do, but that's a brilliant starting point there. Thank you. And absolutely does segue very nicely into George's presentation. So while George is getting her her screen bits and pieces ready. Just a reminder to people, please do put some questions into the Q&A boxes. Happy to bring those to our three speakers once we're finished. And do keep a note of the links that Sally's been putting into the chat. So excellent timing, Georgia. There you go. Handing over to you, please.
Okay, so hello everybody. My name is Dr. Georgia Bowers and I'm a senior lecturer at the University of Surrey, and I'm also a very proud LGBTQ+ ally. And I'm here today to talk to you about the Lifehouse Project, which is a participatory theatre research project with older LGBTQ+ adults, which explores housing and social care in England. So a little bit like Andy has just said in his presentation, we know through existing research conducted by the University of Surrey that there are a number of barriers for older LGBTQ+ individuals. So for example, many have reported having negative experiences with health or social care workers and other support staff. And there also continues to be fears of prejudice, discrimination, or social isolation if sexual orientation or gender identity is disclosed. And within the Lifehouse Project, these concerns were also existing among our older adults that we were co-creating with. So for example, 100% of participants had concerns or anxiety regarding adult social care and housing in later life. Now, their accounts are direct and were often difficult to hear. For example, one person reflected, "I was in hospital for 8 weeks and there's no way I could have come out. I was scared that something bad might happen, especially when I was so vulnerable." Another participant shared, "The staff refused to recognise his relationship because it was with a man. Cigarette burns from the carers were found on him." However, when this group of older adults engaged in our theatre-based workshops and used theatre as a tool to share their experiences and to use it to advocate for change, they reflected that theatre takes the fear away from talking about these things and brings us all together to share how we feel and to get people listening. So, alongside Professor Andy King and Dr. Richard Green, and funded through the ESRC Impact Acceleration account, the Lifehouse Project brought together 10 LGBTQ+ participants aged 50 and all living in London to explore experiences of housing and care in later life through participatory theatre. We worked with London Bubble Theatre Company, who hosted 7 theatre workshops, where the participants used storytelling and character development to co-create a script that highlighted the issues that exist and potential solutions in relation to housing and social care. That script was then developed into an animation, and the animation was piloted as part of ongoing staff EDI training and I am so sorry, I've got distracted by the little heads at the bottom of this screen. The animation was piloted as part of ongoing staff EDI training, and that happened at United St Saviour's and Care Outlook. So I'm really excited to share with you today the animation. So fingers crossed it will play.
Research tells us that older LGBTQ+ people have quite a few concerns about their housing and care needs. They are worried about discrimination from both service providers and other residents.
This animation explores 3 people's experiences of aging, care and home.
Meet Ritu. Ritu's home is her sanctuary. It's a home she built with her late partner, Alicia, a place filled with love for 30 years.
Meet Peter. He recently moved into a care home because of health needs that his family just couldn't meet.
Meet Rose. Rose is a trans woman who moved into sheltered housing with her wife 5 years ago.
I was really worried about the idea of carers coming into my house after my partner died, but knew I needed help when I was diagnosed with dementia. The first person they sent was brilliant. She liked looking at photos of me and my partner and asked questions about our life together.
I've lived alone most of my life. The only man I ever loved was married. The biggest change for me is people coming in and out of my room, just letting themselves in. There's no privacy.
Now we've moved, I can live the way I've always wanted to. We got all kinds of abuse at our old place, verbal and physical. Towards the end, neither of us were leaving the house.
After Elena left, I got sent a different person every week.
You've got a lot of photos of your sister.
What was your husband's name?
You're always in jeans, darling. Let's put a nice dress on you.
What's this flag doing here?
I don't get lesbians. How do they do it?
I told them to get lost, and now apparently I'm the difficult one.
I never thought I'd have someone else to bathe me. I told one of the carers about my handsome Ron once, and then the comments started.
Don't need to touch me. Not like you.
I'm going to undress you now. Don't get too excited.
There's no place in heaven for your type.
We spoke to the staff when we first moved in, which was hard because I'm very private.
Are there other mental health issues we should be aware of?
So which toilets do you use? Do you need a special toilet?
Doesn't your wife mind?
So if you don't take your medication, will you turn back into a man?
They meant well, but it made me very uncomfortable.
I don't want to be difficult or have to hide my identity.
I want to live my life in peace and be supported, to do more of the things I enjoy.
I want to be accepted for who I am, and for other people to understand that there's more to me than being trans.
You can make older adults from the LGBTQ+ community feel safer if you
Wear a rainbow badge.
Introduce yourself using pronouns and ask other people which ones they use.
Learn about LGBTQ+ history.
Instead of using terms such as guys or ladies and gentlemen, use more inclusive language such as friends and everyone.
Acknowledge that people's identities are diverse.
Try to understand what people have been through.
Treat people with dignity and respect.
Everyone has the right to feel safe and cared for in their own home.
Join us to be part of that change.
Okay, so I'm going to just pause out there. So what we did is, after that animation was shown as part of in-house EDI training, we conducted a series of questionnaires, and we found that immediately after the animation training that 95% of staff would recommend the animation as a training tool. 95% had increased confidence in providing care, and a further 90% had improved understanding of LGBTQ+ issues. Now, we wanted to see if there had been a sustained behaviour change, so we returned 6 weeks later, and we discovered that post-training, staff reporting they often or always meet service users' needs increased from 55% to 85%. Use of inclusive language increased from 70 to 95%, and a further 95% of staff said the training continued to influence their work. And I like to think that's not too bad for a 5-minute animation. Alongside this, we also conducted interviews with senior staff and management, and we had an array of rich quotes which are in our project report, but one that I'd like to share with you is that I think people felt quite personally, like emotionally moved by that, which I think is a good way to get people to learn, you know, rather than just here's the data, here's the information, learn it. What we found is, through the analysis of questionnaires and interviews, is that the animation's impact came less from information and more from storytelling and character. Staff engaged not with abstract policy, but with the recognisable peoples whose lives, relationships and vulnerabilities unfolded over time. This fostered emotional investment, which in turn prompted reflection on practice. As a result, staff considered changes to how they supported older LGBTQ+ adults, particularly around inclusion, language, recognition, and overall identity. The storytelling didn't just convey best practice, it created a relational understanding of it, opening space for change. A little while after the animation training, we then secured a little bit more funding and we created an infographic which can now accompany the training, which offers prompts to stimulate reflective conversations. And we also created a short project summary, which outlines in much more detail the overall impact of the animation and the training. So the Lifehouse project does not stop there, and we're at a point where we need you. So on the 19th of June, we will be hosting the Lifehouse project official launch, where we'll be going into much more detail about what we did and also sharing our project film. So if you'd like to join us, you can register by that Scan Me QR code just at the top there. We're also looking for future housing and care partners to help expand the project, support to develop a standalone online training program building on the animation and research findings, funding opportunities to support the next phase of our project, industry professionals, activists and collaborators to join our steering group, and further opportunities to share and promote the Lifehouse project and promote the urgent need for creative, inclusive and community-centred approaches to housing and care. So if you'd like to know more generally about the Lifehouse project, the second QR code just at the bottom of that slide will take you to our webpage, and you're also very, very welcome to get in contact with me. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much indeed, Georgia. That was an amazing animation. Absolutely fabulous. Thank you for sharing that with everybody. Jude, I'm sure you can follow that. Are you ready?
I am ready. Thank you,
Perfect.
Charlotte.
Over
Can
to
everybody
you then,
see
please.
that? Yeah, is that working? Great. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much to the Housing LIN for inviting us to speak this afternoon. I'm Jude Leighton from United St Saviour's Charity, and I'm going to speak a little bit about a housing provider's perspective on a lot of the issues that have already been raised by Andy and by Dr. George Bowers. So I'll be able to pick up on a couple of those things from a provider's perspective, which I hope people will find interesting. Let me see about my slides. Here we go. So if I can, first of all, I won't go on and on, Charlotte, about our Reba Sterling Prize, but I will tell you a little bit about United St Saviour's Charity. For those of you that don't know us, we're an old historic almshouse charity based in the London Borough of Southwark. We're coming up for 500 years old. We were founded in 1541, and our operating model is that we have a lovely investment portfolio of properties around Borough Market, and we use the proceeds of those investments to deliver some really amazing work in Southwark, and particularly our community investment programme, which means that we are a grant maker for lots of good causes and lots of other smaller charities in the borough. But also we provide our almshouses. We have been doing that for the length of the history of our charity, and we're currently at about, I think, 138 homes that we provide at the moment. Most of them are in Southwark. I've just pinged up there a picture of our 4 almshouses. So if I start in the bottom left-hand corner, that's Hopton's Gardens. Hopton's is in Blackfriars area. That's a beautiful Georgian almshouse built in the 1750s. Bottom right-hand corner is our almshouse actually outside Southwark, which is based in Purley, and that's St Saviour's Court, based in the London Borough of Croydon. Top right is Helen Peel Memorial Almshouses. They're in Rotherhithe area, and we only took those over a year and a half ago. But have to mention, top left is our flagship almshouse, the new build Appleby Blue that was opened in the summer of 2023. So we've been open 3 years now. And it's a very exciting place for people that haven't don't know about it or haven't visited before, we provide 58 beautiful homes there, but we've also got a community centre as part of the scheme. So we deliver lots of intergenerational projects in the building. We work with the wider community, and we do, we deliver lots and lots of activities there that really benefit the well-being of the people who are lucky enough to live there. Just quickly on RIBA, so we did win the RIBA Sterling Prize last year, and one of the things that the judges said about Appleby Blue is that it's a building born of deep concern for how to grow old gracefully in a supportive community, and that's really, really important to us. This is where every move in the design has been made to improve the quality of residents' lives. So very much the RIBA judges recognise United St Saviour's vision of promoting well-being for our residents and making that key to the delivery of the services that we provide at Appleby Blue. So getting on to our LGBT work, we are very proudly members of the House Proud Pledge. We first pledged in June 2024, and this is the House Proud Pledge that Andy was talking about earlier. So we're one of the 98 housing providers that have made the pledge. So we started this actually because we always wanted to keep our work with our LGBTQ plus community quite key to our wider diversity and inclusion work. And we had previously been working towards a Pride in Care accreditation, which was provided by Opening Doors London. And that kind of folded in COVID. And then we were looking around for a more suitable accreditation to kind of help us to frame the work that we do in this area. So when we came across House Proud, it's absolutely ideal because it really suits housing providers. We provide independent living almshouses, so we knew that we wanted sort of an accreditation that was really suited to housing providers. So we made the pledge in June 2024, and we were delighted. It took us a full year, but in May 2025, we achieved the Pioneer Pledge status. So that was last year. And there's Alessandro there collecting our certificate from Jack. So how did we meet the standard? Well, we kind of tried to keep this work very much alive. So we started off by setting up something that we call our Rainbow Club, which I'm going to talk a bit more about in a minute. But at the start of our work, we launched the Rainbow Club, and we had a big event to launch that. We named our champions. So we named a resident champion, a trustee champion, and a staff champion. And they're all people from the LGBT community who would make sure that in every area of our work, we were keeping a focus on the House Proud Pledge and our responsibilities to our LGBT community. We trained our staff, and I've got to mention the Lifehouse project here. We participated in the Lifehouse project, and that was the animation that we've all just watched was a key part of the training program for the staff at United St Saviour's. We increased visibility, and I'm really proud of this, and I'm going to just show you all my lanyard because we're very certain that all our staff should make sure that there is LGBT plus visibility around the buildings at all times. And we've actually found that's been really beneficial to opening up conversations with residents. People have actually come forward. People have actually come out of the closet after a lot of years and said it's simply because of the visibility. So I highly recommend that in your organisations if you're looking to be more inclusive and try and help people to be their most authentic selves. As part of the pledge, we had to review our policies and procedures to make sure that we were meeting all the requirements of the pledge. And then we planned a series of events, which I'll go through some of those in a minute. They're very varied. We've got some which are dedicated events for the LGBTQ plus community, and then there are others that are widely inclusive, and we involve everybody in the community. as I said, we try and do a lot of intergenerational work, and we also involve a lot of allies. So we've invested in some educational reading materials as well. So we've got LGBTQ plus libraries now in all our almshouses, and that's been quite a good talking point and a good way to start conversations. So this was the Rainbow Club launch, which we did last year. This was just a great opportunity to invite lots of interesting speakers to come along. We invited all our residents, of course, but we had an expert panel discussion. I don't know why I'm in that picture. I'm not an expert, but we did get genuine experts in the field to come along and talk to us about their experiences. The second picture, the live experience representation, that's Dr. Terry. Dr. Terry is our resident champion. He lives in Hopton's Almshouses, and he very proudly heads up the Rainbow Club. He heads up a lot of our House Proud work, and he is really active and participates, which is a real blessing to have a resident. If you can get a resident champion, that makes all the difference in this work. The audience participation was really key, so we got lots of questions. No question was out of bounds. People spoke about a lot of their personal experiences. Lots of interesting information came out during the Q&A. And then the best thing about the Rainbow Club launch, of course, was that enormous cake. You can see celebration and inclusion, and House Proud actually commended us on our focus on celebration and joy, because, you know, we want this to be a joyful project for all our residents. So let me talk to you about some of the events we've done. The first thing we did last summer, which was so much fun, was a panto called Prince Charming. So we've got that on two headings there, but that's actually the same event. The Pride Panto was just such a lot of fun. We brought in a local theatre company who'd previously written an LGBT panto. The residents themselves did all the organisation. They sold the tickets, they did the refreshments, they joined in. It was a really joyous event with lots of singing and dancing at the end. And the best thing about it, I have to say this, is that it was funded by the London Borough of Southwark, because they give away Pride funding every summer. I'm delighted to say I've got it again this year, and they actually the whole event was funded by the council, and that meant that the tickets were free. The doors were open on a Saturday afternoon. It was a really hot afternoon. It was a very gentle kind of fun event that was suitable for children, but it tackled some tricky issues. It tackled homophobia. It was all about Prince Charming's mother wanting him to have babies and to have an heir to the throne, and yet he was gay and didn't want to get married to any of the awful ugly sisters. So that was a great event. We're going to do something similar again this summer, but this time it's going to be more of a cabaret. And talking of cabarets, we work closely with the Posh Club. If anybody has never come across the Posh Club, they work a lot in London, I think in Brighton as well. Superb daytime cabarets and theatre events for older people, daytime discos. They're really they can be quite raunchy. Older people absolutely love the Posh Club. The tickets sell out straight away, so highly recommend them. If any organisations are looking for a good way to start a project like this, get the Posh Club involved. They're fantastic. We've also done a lot of learning and collaborating. So we did a visit to the Queer Britain Museum with the Rainbow Club, and that was a really lovely opportunity for us to get away from the almshouses and talk about some of the issues that particularly our community that are living in our almshouses are facing. As I said earlier, we created our LGBTQ plus libraries, and we bought some books so that we could have those around. And again, that's all part of the visibility in the almshouses. And Georgia spoke about it, but you know, we were absolutely delighted and privileged to be involved with the Lifehouse project. As I said, we used the animation for training, and our staff were all able to feed into some of those stats that you saw earlier from Georgia. So thank you to the Lifehouse project for including us in that. So what's to come? There's a few things that I want to do. I'd love to have a float at Pride, but I don't know if I'll ever get that. Pride London. But we are creating some dedicated LGBT spaces because we think that we've got enough participants now in the Rainbow Club that we can create some private spaces for them. We're going to continue with our intergenerational events. I'm quite keen to set up a grandparents club because I've come across lots of older people who are allies and who are saying that they'd love to learn more on behalf of their children and their grandchildren. They'd love to understand LGBT issues more widely. So a grandparents club is kind of on my horizon. We're going to carry on having loads of fun because we believe that that is the way to get people involved. Always have fun, always bring cake. And then we're going to continue to expand our partnerships. So, as I said, special thank you to the Lifehouse Project and to House Proud. But you know, we're very happy to collaborate with others and share this work more widely. So, just wanted to end with a quote from one of our residents. He said, "I've been a resident with St Saviour's for over 10 years now, and the management's commitment to LGBTQ plus rights and issues has been exemplary. This culminated in the successful launch of the Rainbow Club, which provided a warm welcome to all with an interest, and especially supports the welfare of our LGBTQ plus residents." And that is from one of our residents from Hopton's Gardens. So thank you very much for listening. I hope that was interesting. And any questions, I'll be here for the rest of the session. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Jude. I think that's all G'd us up a little bit after the animation, which I think was makes a little bit of soul searching, I think, for everybody there. So thank you very much indeed for that. And of course, it's not an almshouse without cake, in my experience. So well done on that one. And thank you very much indeed to all of my speakers there. I'm going to open up the floor to the Q&A. I, of course, will have some, but if I can just pick up a couple of questions here. Jude, you've talked for a while, so let's see if we can get some of the others back in. So the first question, and I think probably, Andy, this is best directed to you. Is the LGBTQ plus housing pledge also for 24/7 supported living? So does that cover, or does the housing pledge, is it made available to all working within supported housing and social housing?
It's all social housing. And if you've got any sort of questions about whether your particular provider could join the pledge, if you go to the Stonewall Housing website, there's links there. You can ask various questions, and Jack or Alex will get back to you. They do fantastic work of engaging not only people that are signed up to the pledge, but also promoting it and answering questions about it as well. So yeah, I would definitely recommend making contact there.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And just a general comment, incredible the work, incredible the impact that your research has had on the sector. So a particular thanks to you there, Andy, on that one. I just had a question, and I think it encapsulates both what you were talking to, what Georgia was talking to as well. How do you balance, when you're conducting your research here, with one of the issues that Georgia flagged in her presentation, which was privacy? How do you balance between asking people questions, and how maybe does a housing provider do this in looking to provide suitable care for individuals wherever they come from, wherever they fit in into all of this, to ensure that in asking questions that will better assist the provider in providing care and support whilst respecting that privacy? How does that balance through, and particularly in your research?
So in the research, any questions that we ask have to be cleared by our ethics committee, that they are appropriate questions, that they're not that people are not going to experience harm as a result if they do trigger any particularly sort of concerning a response, that people have got support as well. And I think it's really about a kind of ethics of care in how you ask questions, and ensuring that questions are kind of phrased in a particular way. I think you have to build trust as well. And I know that's something that is particularly important for providers as well. That, you know, that it is about building trust to be able to ask for information. People need, certainly when we've asked people about should housing providers or care providers ask questions around sexual orientation or gender identity, that we've very much had mixed responses. So some people say, absolutely, you ask me about my age, you ask me about my ethnicity, you ask me all sorts of other questions. I want you to ask these questions. For other people, they're more concerned about that, and particularly about what happens to that data, where's it stored, who has access to it as well. And I think, you know, that at the moment that's even more significant. But I don't know if Jude wants to talk about this from a provider's point of view as well.
If you would, Jude, that would be great. And then I'll put on one of the questions which you've got in the wrong box, but I will take it from the chat box and move it to the Q&A. So, Jude, could you answer firstly, a follow on from Andy's comments?
Yeah, thank you. I think it's quite an interesting point, and I think it's something that's worth sort of investing in staff training, because it's about, you know, sort of on the ground level, it's sort of about sensitivity in communication and communicating with residents, you know. And for us, it's certainly about kind of creating spaces, sort of open questions, and creating spaces where people feel safe and they feel comfortable and they feel able to speak to you. And, you know, sometimes we get it wrong, and sometimes, you know, it doesn't quite work. But, you know, we think that kind of with the right approach to resident support and the way that our staff are trained to work with individuals, I think that's kind of how we get round kind of conversations that, you know, are potentially kind of things that people might not want to talk about.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Georgia, obviously, Jude's talked a little bit about training of staff, obviously the work that you've been doing with Lifehouse. Any other tips or ideas that you could give to people in the audience? The questions come in regarding what advice would you offer for a housing association that's starting their journey to support LGBTQ plus customers? Any top tips or information that you could divulge, obviously in addition to checking out your website and the various links which are in the chat for information relating to the Lifehouse project?
I think what we found in our research is that it was really important to create a culture where staff didn't feel they were going to be shamed if they gave a wrong or a right answer. And I think what both United St Saviour's and Care Outlook did really well was having conversations with their staff before, during, and after the training, saying, you know, please, this isn't about being a good or a bad professional in this space, or a good or a bad carer. This is about coming to it, being open, wanting to learn, wanting to do better. And it's okay to pose a question that perhaps is coming from a genuine place of curiosity or lack of knowledge and understanding. Because I think sometimes when carers are coming to these training sessions, especially if English isn't a first language, there can be such a fear that they're going to say the wrong thing. And so, yes, I think just creating that environment, which does take time. And I think because United St Saviour's, for example, has such a fantastic relationship with their staff anyway, there's already that trust built. So I would say that. And then I think it's about making sure that this isn't a one-hit wonder, as it were. So it's returning to the training. You know, if you wanted to use the Lifehouse animation, for example, it's not a one-off. It is having regular check-ins about this work. It's holding yourself accountable, you know, creating almost a manifesto of what you want to do within this area of LGBTQ plus inclusion, and making sure that you commit to that and it's ongoing. So yes, it's certainly not just watching the animation thinking, right, I know everything now, I'm good to go. And it's how do you find ways to gently and kindly keep yourself, but also everybody that you're working with accountable.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. that's that. Not making this a tick box exercise if people want to do this, and of course supporting all those involved in all the aspects of this project. I think that's very, very important there. We're nearly running out of time, and as Sally warned us previously, the line will just cut dead. So any other questions that people want to put into the chat or the Q&A, please do so ASAP. Whilst doing that, if I can just pick up a couple of those. Questions regarding are there any somebody's asked about current social housing providers or care providers currently dedicated 100% to LGBTQ plus communities. So very much aware of Tonic, and I think there was, Jeremy, do you know, is that the Manchester Tonic, is that coming on board?
Well, it's interesting you should ask, and there's just been a question in the chat. We have got the architect working on the new extra care scheme for LGBTQ in Manchester at our happy hour next week. So please hold your horses and join us again next week.
Right, there you go. That's definitely
he's not
a tease for
speaking
people.
specifically on that, but we've asked him to draw reference to it.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Well, there you go, people. Sign up to next week's one, please. Just other questions. Jude, how does your team ensure that your house proud values are communicated to external carers coming into your almshouses?
Again, I'm just looking at some of the comments in the chat. It really is about visibility, and I can't sort of overstate that really, because sort of, you know, we have notice boards and posters, and as I said, sort of the lanyard, and because we bring contractors in, and we're very conscious of the point that Andy raised earlier about contractors coming in and working in people's homes, and some people feeling very uncomfortable about that because that, you know, because of their lifestyle, they don't want a contractor to know that. So we're quite careful when we select our contractors that they understand the values of United St Saviour's, and we're also, from the residents' perspective, we're kind of there to support. So if you know, if they wanted to be accompanied, if they wanted us to accompany contractors when they're having somebody come to their home. So, you know, there are lots of ways you can do that, but you know, it's very much about visibility for me. I know I keep saying it, but it's about kind of, you know, there's no ambiguity. It's very clear where everybody stands in the almshouses, that, you know, this is an inclusive space.
Thank you. And a really good way to end this, I think, picking up on Matt's comment, which is the last one in the Q&A. How do we access the recording? The recording will be made available shortly after today's event. So please do encourage all of your colleagues to both sign up to HousingLIN updates, but also to check out the recording on this one. Jeremy, would you like to sign off?
Charlotte, what an incredible session. Thanks very much for skillfully chairing. I think we all agree it's been a really important one to address these issues so publicly. Andy, I was around in London and housing in the 80s and 90s when we had the London Lighthouse. What, isn't it brilliant that we now have the Life House as well? So again, you know, that transition and thinking about how we all transit and get to know and actually think inclusively about a community that has been so underserved for decades. So thanks very much for all your contributions, really valuable. Matt, we will share that this week. Please do cascade that on. It will be on our YouTube channel. As I alluded to, next week we have our first happy hour on our new SHAPE programme, where we're looking at a broad range of community-led and collaborative housing models, particularly through the lens of co-housing. But as I said, one of our contributors is the architect, also working on the first ever extra care scheme in Manchester. So do join us next week. But as this is a happy hour, can I toast all your contributions and Charlotte, your excellent sharing, and wish you and the team behind the scenes a good evening. See you next week, I hope.